Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I kind of felt like I was on WJR with Ken speaking here. He's got such a great voice, doesn't he? But
see what I mean?
it was a really great experience playing at Notre Dame for me. It was a lifelong dream. It's one of those things that when you're a little kid, you say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a cowboy. I always wanted to be a Notre Dame football player, and especially for Ara Parseghian. As I got older, that was a real reason why I wanted to go there. Now, if Ara might have been at Northwestern or Miami of Ohio, and I knew as much as I did about him at those places, I probably would have went there as well. Because when it's all said and done, it's really about people and the effect that they can have on you. And that's what you guys do as Knights of Columbus. You're able to really affect people in a very positive way, which is great. But I'd like to tell you a story or two before we get started on this presentation about my years at Michigan and Notre Dame, and between Michigan, Notre Dame, and Michigan State, really. As a sophomore, I was the only sophomore to start that year, and it wasn't so much because I was the best sophomore athlete, but because the opportunity was there. And I was ready when that opportunity came. I used to be 6'5" and 285 pounds, and they pounded me down to about 6 foot. So nowadays, when the people ask me, where did you play? I said, well, I was an offensive guard. They say, come on, you couldn't have been an offensive guard. You were probably a linebacker, or maybe even a strong safety, or a fullback. I said, no, I was an offensive guard. And last year, I had a chance to meet Quentin Nelson, who is the offensive left guard at Notre Dame, who was a redshirt freshman. Now, when I walked up to him, he was about 6'6" and 325 pounds. And when you are standing next to this person, the person behind him can't see any part of you at all. He's huge, and he doesn't even shave. I mean, this is a young kid, about 19 to 20 years old, that's going to apply for the NFL draft, and he's really a good player. Even though Notre Dame had kind of a very bad season, he was a really good player. So I remember one time playing against Michigan State, and I know we have some state fans here. And by the way, I'm a huge Mark Antonio fan. He's one of the best in the business. He's really a good man. More importantly, he's a great football coach, but more importantly, a great man. And he really has an effect on a lot of the kids that he interacts with there. And I know for a fact because two reasons. Number one, the strength coach there is a good friend of mine, and he raves about Mark. And the other one is we had two kids. One is Khari Willis, who's a defensive back for them right now, played at William Christie. The best offensive back I've ever seen in person. He had close to 3,000 yards a year. He played with us his senior year. And he was also all-state in basketball. The kid was just a tremendous athlete. But he comes back and just raves about Coach D'Antonio. And we had Leland Ewing, who was a second-team long snapper. And you wouldn't think that would be that much of an impression. But this fella scooped up as much as he could about the program and just loved the coaches there. Mark does things the right way. And even though I am not really a Michigan State fan, I am a Mark D'Antonio fan. So I remember in 1971, it was a really hot day in South Bend, humid, about 90 degrees, and I got moved from left guard to left tackle, and I'm thinking, boy, this is not good. I only played one game, and I'm moved to tackle already. They must think I'm pretty slow. Well, what happened is they had a big defensive tackle, and they felt that I could run block better against him. So I had a chance to play this guy named Les Joseph, who was really a good player. Well, I was blocking him, and I kept blocking, and I wanted to go to the whistle. Ara had this saying, play the interval. And the interval was a snap of the ball until the whistle. And I used to take that to the top degree. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Well, Mr. Joseph didn't like that too much. He turned around on his knees. He just gives me an elbow in the head. And I'm on my knees. I'm looking at him, and I slug him right in the head. So with that, a brouhaha ensues. And the referees are trying to break it up. They're getting thrown out of the pile. And out comes this little Irishman. Now, you may think that's a Notre Dame guy, but it was Duffy Doherty. And he grabs me by one side, and Joseph's on the other side. He said, 56, get back in your huddle. Joseph, get back in your huddle. Actually, I was glad he broke it up because I was really getting tired. But that was a great experience playing against a coach like Duffy Doherty. He was really a colorful character, and he had great, hard-hitting teams. Now, in those days, we didn't play against Michigan, which was good and bad. I think that was would have been a great rivalry back in the 70s. And of course, Bo and Ara really were the best of friends. I didn't know this, but they were on the same staff together at Miami, and then were on the staff together at Northwestern. I remember Bo at a dinner one time said, you know, I went with Ara to Northwestern, and we went 0-9 that year. He said, I figured I learned as much as I was going to learn from him, so I went to work for Woody again, which I thought was kind of funny. But Bo and Ara used to actually exchange game films every weekend. When you think about that, Notre Dame, Michigan, exchanging game films. And Ara used to critique Michigan's films, and Bo used to critique Notre Dame films. So they intimately knew each other's teams. And back in those days, that's the way they got along. It was about people, not about institutions fighting against each other. And a lot of times, I think you could take that to another degree nowadays, too, when you're talking about how people argue about Democrats and Republicans. Hey, we're all on the same team here. We're all Americans, and that's what's really good. Let's go over another 10 years from there. I'm a salesman for the Nautilus Company, and one of my accounts is the University of Michigan. So I'm introduced to Bo Schembechler, and the fellow says, Coach, this is Frank Pomarico, who's captain at Notre Dame, and they won a national championship in 1973. Bo looked at me and he said, Notre Dame? Why did you bring a Notre Dame guy here to deal with us? I said, Coach, I did go to Notre Dame, but I played for Eric Parseghian. Why I said that, I don't know. He looked at me, paused, and he said, son, you can stay all you want. And from that time on, he became my biggest customer. So guys, it's about people. That's the real important thing. And then another 20 years later, I introduced Bo to my son, Tom, who was a tight end at Lumen Christi. And Bo said to him, I said, Coach, this is my son, Tom. He said, Tom, how are you? You remember how Bo used to, rough voice, Bo, Tom, how are you? He says, what year are you? He says, I'm a senior, Coach. He says, now don't give me that bullshit, you're going to Notre Dame, your ass is coming right here to Michigan. So with that, Tom said, well, I'd love to, Coach. And a couple of years later, we had a chance to go down to Notre Dame, but we never heard back from them. And we did hear back from Michigan. So Tom went to Michigan and was a 3-year starter at Michigan, and as a long snapper in 9, 10, and 11. And more importantly, Tom won the Distinguished Scholar Athlete Award from the Big Ten, something his father probably never would have done. So he had a good career there, and that's kind of my stories about the Michigan program. I'm excited about Michigan this year, too, with Harbaugh. I think he really adds a lot of spice and passion to the Big Ten program, which is really neat. I mean, I think if Washington gets beat tonight, I don't know what the score is, but if Washington gets beat, then Michigan has a real shot to be in that Final Four. You know, people are bitching and moaning about that last game against Ohio State, but all I have to say is that, hey, if you want to give them the game like you did, go ahead. You know, they threw 2 interceptions for 14 points and fumbled on the 1-yard line. It's kind of tough to win games that way. And Ohio State's a pretty good team. But overall, I think with Jim Harbaugh in the Big Ten, he's really going to heat things up. So without further ado, guys, I had a chance about 4 or 5 years ago. A person called me and said, hey, I'd like to interview you. I said, okay, about what? He said, playing at Notre Dame. I said, okay. So we met, and he said, what was it like playing for Eric Parseghian? I said, well, it was kind of like playing for royalty. This guy was our King Arthur, and we were his knights. He said, ooh, that's really something. He says, you should write a book about that. I said, maybe I will. So 3 years later, I had this book finished, and it was really It was an easy thing for me to do. I mean, it wasn't easy as far as the time you put in and as far as the energy you put into the book, but it was a lot of fun to do. And Ara Parsesian was the kind of guy who could have been a governor, a senator, he could have been the president of the United States. That's how charismatic and organized he was. And he was the kind of guy that was real, a guy that if he said something to you, it was going to happen. And as we go through this presentation, I think you'll understand some of the things that he was so good at. All right, if I can work this thing properly, let's see here. There's a common bond, really, between what an Ara's night is and what the Knights of Columbus are all about. And I think as we go through this presentation, you're gonna understand what I'm talking about. This is a saying that Ara used to love. Fame is a vapor. Popularity is an accident. For those who cheer you today will boo you tomorrow. But one thing that always endures, and that's character. And he said, we want to build strong character in our players. Not just to be good football players, not to be able to push hard when you're behind in a game, but maybe when your wife is sick, or maybe when your kid is sick. And then you really have to dig deep and give everything you have. That's when it's really important to have that character. We try to use those same kind of qualities Herb Grogan does at Lumen Christi. There's a guy who fits right in the same line as an Ara Parsesian and a Bo Schembechler. How do we develop leaders? Well, let's see if we can talk about this. Leadership starts in individual discipline and values at Notre Dame. All the players at Notre Dame, all the students at Notre Dame believe in God. This is a side door. This is above the side door at the Basilica at Sacred Heart, which is right next to the dorm I lived in, called Soren Hall, Soren College. The thing I loved about Soren Hall was that when I got married, I rolled out of bed, put on my tuxedo, and walked 90 feet to get married. I was kind of neat. But most of us feel very strongly about the country, about freedom, about being able to do things that you want to do and achieve the things that you want to achieve. And the most important thing, I think, is the idea of being able to help one another. Those are the things that Ara really pounded upon us. You know, to be good citizens and to make a difference. Questions I ask myself. I think any time that we are good leaders, we have to be good individuals that achieve things as well. And then as we mature with experience, we have a tendency to understand how to rub that off on people with not as much experience. And it starts with dreams. And let me tell you, when I was 13 years old, watching the Michigan State Notre Dame game in 1966, and my dad was saying, hey, I got to bet with Big Jim Williams at the station house. He's got Michigan State, I got Notre Dame. They say this guy Parsesian is really a good coach. And I saw this guy walking up and down with such intensity and fire. I said, boy, it would be neat. My dad thinks this guy is so great. I said, boy, that would be neat to be able to go to Notre Dame. And of course, the nuns at Our Lady of Grace, and then the brothers at St. Francis Prep, they were all pushing Notre Dame in those days. It was a little bit different. The atmosphere was a little bit different. So then I developed goals. You know, all the goals that I needed in order to achieve the big goal, which is to get to Notre Dame. Number one, I had to academically be very sharp in order to get to that level. Number two, physically, I had to get as big and as strong as I possibly could. And that meant weight training, that meant running, that meant playing all the different sports in the off season, like rugby. I threw the shot and disc. So I was always heading towards my goal. People would say, geez, how can you do all this stuff? Why would you do all this stuff continually? I says, hey, it's not work for me. It's not sacrifice for me, because everything along this journey is geared to playing at Notre Dame. Now, I may not get there, but I'm going to get someplace pretty good if I don't get there. So if you have that underlying passion and that drive to reach your goal, I think you get a plan together and you try to get there. And the purpose was, I wanted like crazy for my father to say that I accomplished something good. And to me, playing left guard at the University of Notre Dame was as good as I can give him. That's what I wanted to give him. I felt that I could achieve that. And why left guard? I'll explain that in a little while. Now, there's an experience along the way, which I just talked about, how you have to embrace every part of that experience. The journey. Peter Havner wrote a book called The Lonely Victory. He was a guy who climbed Mount Everest without oxygen. You know, climbing mountains is pretty tough. I did a few. Mount Whitney in California, Mount Rainier in Washington, and they were tough, but this is twice as high. And of course, the oxygen is a big part of it getting to the top. But he said, you know, just reaching a goal is not just the answer. You have to embrace the whole journey. And for me, every repetition I did on the bench press, the squat, the deadlift, every game I played in rugby, every time I threw the shot put and competed, these were all things that were building my passion and desire and reaching for my goal. My journey started in New York City. My dad was a New York City policeman, and when he retired, he was a lieutenant in narcotics. He was a big, strong guy, a nice guy, a loving father. You know, he would discipline us pretty good, but he couldn't do it all the time because he was working a lot, you know. So my mother used to step in and throw a couple of left hooks at us if we were doing anything wrong. But she was a hot, fiery Italian woman, and if you were on her side, things were good. But if you weren't, look out. There's my mom there. She passed away about 21, 22 years ago. But she used to tell me, Frankie, I was Frankie, dream, and dream big. Dream as high as you possibly can. Robert Browning, a man's reach must exceed his grasp of what's ahead and for. I used to think about that all the time. I said, hey, I'm going to reach as high as I possibly can. What, for me at the time, for Eric Garcia being at Notre Dame, what's higher than Notre Dame? For me, it embodies spiritual, physical, and academic. Those are the three things I was most interested in. There's my son Tom at 14 years old. When he played in Michigan, he was 6'5", 240. And my dad, I think, is shrinking, but he's 86 now. And he used to say, hey, listen, discipline and hard work is really the way to get to your goals. And that's what you have to do. I don't care what everybody else is doing. You get up in the morning and you make sure you do your exercise before school and after school. He used to talk about being in the Marine Corps. You don't have to read all this, but he used to talk about in the Marine Corps, one of the first things that they did at Parris Island is that they had to make their bed every morning. And he used to make us make our bed. And I say, Dad, why do I got to keep making my bed? He says, hey, listen, this is the first task of the day. You're going to get it done, and you're going to do it right. And so if you don't do it right, you're going to do it again. And if you don't do it right, you're going to do it again. And he says, what you want to do is you're going to have different obstacles throughout the day. And every day, every obstacle you're going to overcome. This is an easy one. All you have to do is make your bed. At the end of the day, you're going to come back to a bed that's made. You don't have your mother have to do it and pick up after you. You're going to do it yourself. It kind of made sense. I hated doing it, but after a while, it became like second nature. But I think as in life, as we go along, you start building this underlining theme of getting things done. One list after another, and you're getting productive, and you're getting more experience on how to do things. This is St. Francis Prep. This is an old converted grade school in the middle of the block on between Driggs and Bedford Avenue on North 6th Street in Brooklyn, about half a mile from the Williamsburg Bridge. Now, it was kind of an Hispanic, Polish, German area when I was going to school there. Now the brownstones are going for $1 million or $2 million. It's unbelievable. It was really not the greatest neighborhood. But it was the kind of place where people used to wash their stoops, and they had a lot of pride in whatever they had. But St. Francis Prep was run by their brothers. It was 900 boys crammed into this converted grade school. And I can remember, first day of school, Brother Williams said, I'm sitting there right next to my father. He says, hey, listen, if we don't think your son's doing the right thing and we whack him, if you don't like it, take him out of school today. My father looked at me and says, I like this place. I go, oh boy, I'm in for a tough 4 years. Actually, the brothers became our good friends. You know, they were good guys. They were disciplined. but they loved us, as the nuns did too, at Our Lady of Grace. This is the first game I saw with my dad. Notre Dame, Michigan State, 10-10 tie. I get a lot of people telling me, well, why did Notre Dame go for the tie? Well, you know, Michigan State punted with about 4 minutes to go. They didn't cross the 50 in the second half. So we got some of those questions bouncing back and forth, but that was one of the greatest games. I have it on DVD, and it's the hard hitting is still evident today. It's my high school coach. These are things he used to talk about. These are buddies. The guy on the right is a Secret Service agent for Bill Clinton and Ronnie Reagan and George Bush, a great guy. And the older guy in the middle is Brother Owen, who was our JV coach, but also he was the backbone of the athletic program. He had everybody in the weight room, and he had everybody playing rugby. Good guy. But he used to preach things like, you don't have to have any talent at all to be on time. You don't have to have any talent at all to work hard. You don't need any talent at all to have a positive attitude. Just think about those things, guys. If you read some of those things, being prepared, doing extra, those are things we all can do. No talent needed. This is my high school coach, Vince O'Connor. He was the head coach for 56 years at St. Francis Prep. And he died about 2 years ago, but he used to preach us, you don't need any talent to be tough or to give 100%. And that's the two things that always stuck in my mind. You have to do it. No matter how much you want something, you have to do it. You are responsible to get things done. You're not going to depend on your mother or your father or your brother to get things done for you. You have to go out and create opportunities. Because there's never going to be a perfect time to achieve some of the things you want to achieve. What you have to do is you have to take the bull by the horns and say, hey, listen, I want this. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to become a certified teacher because I want to coach. Or I'm going to go to school and I want to become an accountant and now I'm going to get past that test. But you got to do it. Nobody else can do it for you. This is Joe Frazier and Ali. Most of you guys probably remember this because we're probably somewhere in the same vintage and age. One of the greatest boxing matches I've ever seen. Joe Frazier was the champ. Ali was trying to get his crown back. And in the 15th round, Frazier hits him with a vicious left hook. And the champ had never been down. I mean, Ali had never been down. And he goes down like a sack of potatoes. And with that, they asked him, what were you thinking when you were laying on the mat? He said, get up, get up, get up. And I think that's what football and that's what life is all about. Getting back up, no matter what kind of situation you're in. I don't know how many times I have a younger brother who had, at 18 years old, he had testicle cancer. He was the captain of the CW Post, a small Division III school back east. He fought all the way back, went from 215 to 220 down to about 160 pounds after his treatment, came back up to 220 again and became captain his senior year. And that to me is somebody who never quit. And there's Ali laying on the mat after that vicious left hook. If you ever get a chance to watch this on YouTube, great fight. You younger guys who've never seen it. Never give up, never quit. Everything you get in life is earned, never given. That's the motto you got to go with. Because if you think that people are going to give you stuff, it's not going to happen. This is a dream I had as an 8th grader at Our Lady of Grace. Now I tell you, we had a lot of nuns rooting for us. In those days, every teacher, every classroom was filled with nuns. We had the Ursuline nuns at Our Lady of Grace. And my 7th grade teacher looked very familiar to me. And the reason why she looked familiar, because she looked like one of my favorite ball players, Joe Torre. It was his sister. It was Sister Marguerite. And Sister Marguerite and Sister Jerome used to come out into the playground and play stickball with us every noon at recess. They were great gals. They really loved us. I mean, they were tough. They would give you a whack if you needed one. But they were good gals. And this is the place I wanted to come to ever since I was in the 8th grade. There's Aaron. Now this is a guy, now he's 93 years old. He's probably about 45 here. But he built his programs on building pride with discipline and loyalty. And when you talk about those things, when you talk about pride, we used to work us hard in the spring, and he used to work us hard in summer ball. And the reason why he would do that in summer ball, he says, we're going to be the best conditioned team. When you have a lot of pride in yourself, you don't want to give that up. And you will fight to the bitter end no matter what the situation is. I think it's very similar when you're talking about the Navy SEALs or the Marine Corps or any elite physical team. Discipline. Find everything you possibly can about how to compete. Now for me, I used to watch film like crazy. There was a guy from my grade school. You've heard of Jerry DiNardo. He's on the Big Ten Network. Jerry DiNardo was the head coach at Indiana, LSU, and Vanderbilt. But before that, he was an assistant at a couple other different. We grew up together from the 5th grade through Our Lady Grace and St. Francis, and then Notre Dame. He was the right guard, I was the left. But the guy that really gave us the motivation was his older brother, Larry. Larry came to Notre Dame 3 years before us, and we got to know about this little guy, Eric Parseghian, through Larry. And we felt that we were right in the huddle with Eric because of Larry. And we did everything Larry did. If Larry walked a certain way, we were going to walk that way too. If he did certain exercises, we were going to do it too. Because we wanted to get as close to what Larry had as we could. This is the grotto at Notre Dame. It's a replica of Lourdes. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's really a center of peace at Notre Dame. It's behind the Sacred Heart Basilica. It was a cathedral when I was there. But it really is a non-denominational place. Now, of course, the Blessed Mother's there, but we see Muslims there, we see Hindus there, Buddhists. We see all kinds of religions there. And Jews, they know this is a sacred place. They know this is a place where they can pray. And they can talk to God. No matter what God they have, they can talk to him. And you have a really good feeling when you're there. And it really looks spectacular in the snow. And around Christmas time, when the snow is coming down and the candles are lit, it's really a special place. Now, there was a tradition at Notre Dame when I was there, that you would say a prayer there the night before the game, and then you would go across the lake. There was a monastery, and we used to stay at the monastery instead of going to a hotel. They had a movie theater in there, and then we would have mass the next day. And you knew how many games you dressed for because you could count the medals that they gave you. They gave you a medal for every time you suited up. And I wasn't superstitious at all, but I had a scapular in my right hand and the medal in my left to protect my knees. But it was neat little things like that that made it special. Now, Aaron was a Protestant. I think he was a Methodist. But he appreciated everything about the Catholic tradition. So it was an easy place to be with Eric Parseghian. The pride I had at this point, when you're ready to go out onto the field. Now, the stadium wasn't as big as it is now. It was 59,000 as opposed to 81,000. But I always knew where my mom and dad were going to be sitting. They would sit in certain seats that they had and I used to see them. I used to wave like crazy. Look, can you believe I'm here playing at Notre Dame? And they used to wave back like crazy. So for us, it was a really big thing. Oh, wrong way. Okay, number 72 is Jerry DiNardo. Number 44 is Eric Pennick. And I'm number 56. This is against Purdue. This play actually goes for a touchdown, which was great. But this same play was called buck sweep left. What we would do is fake the fullback up the middle to freeze the linebackers because they had to respect the fullback. If you didn't respect the fullback, he'd run for 5 or 6 yards, and they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to give up that kind of yardage. Against Southern Cal, they were number 1 the year before. We played them in 72. They beat us. They won the national championship. In 73, they were at our place. The first play in the second half, we get the ball. Eric Pennick was our fastest guy. He ran a 9.500. He takes off around left end behind Jerry and my blocks and goes 85 yards for a touchdown. I never heard the stadium explode like it did that day. It was really one of those moments that you never forget. You can see it on YouTube. It's unbelievable. You can see those things. And you can realize how long ago that was because it's very fuzzy. When you lose, it's not over. When you quit, it's over. I mean, you can talk about that with rearing your kids. You can talk about that as your marriage. You can talk about that as a football game, a handball game, golf, whatever you want. Your business. You know, you're going to get beat. If you look at that score up there, I don't know if you can see it, but it's Notre Dame 6, and on the other side, you can't see it, but it's Nebraska 40. We played them in the Orange Bowl and got destroyed. They had the best 8-3 team I had ever seen. They had Johnny Rogers. He got caught for robbing a gas station after he won the Heisman. That's why we call him Johnny. But the whole idea about it is that, you know, you got to keep going. You know, you're going to fall down. You're going to get knocked down a lot. But you got to get up and you got to keep fighting every day. Play the interval of life. Now, all that discipline came to fruition in this game here against Southern Cal. I'm number 56. I love this picture because I'm the only mug you can see. This was taken by Sports Illustrated, and I got it like 30 years after the game. But that was a great shot of Tommy Clements going over. Now, Tommy Clements is somebody who went on to play in the CFL and was in the Hall of Fame. He was a quarterback, a great quarterback. He also graduated #1 in Notre Dame Law School. He's really a bright guy. We all wanted him to become the head coach at Notre Dame a number of different times, but it didn't happen. Who knows? Maybe it could happen again. You never know. All right, this is Notre Dame in January. And when you come back from Christmas vacation, this is what it looks like. Now you might say, boy, that's terrible. I mean, it's pretty, but you know, it's 5 below zero. I mean, it's windy. I mean, your nose is sticking together because it's so humid. And well, what happens is that the athletes don't stay in an athletic dorm. You all stay in regular dorms with everybody else. And when this happens, you get a second family. You have your Notre Dame football family, but you also have the guys that are in the dorm that are all cheering for you. You know, they have a special bond with you because, you know, maybe you went out and had a couple of beers the night before, or a couple of burgers, or whatever the situation is. But there's an attachment between you and the regular student. And that's the thing I liked about Notre Dame. And when they had a problem, you had a problem too. Just like anybody that has a problem, you want to help them and support them as much as you can. Knights of Parsesia. Playing for our Parsesia was like playing for royalty. We all felt like we were knights in his kingdom. His standards were high. Aaron wanted leaders with character to affect the world beyond just football. There's Regis Philbin in the middle there. Joe Montori next to him. He's a Notre Dame grad. That's Regis's wife and Joe's wife. But Regis did the forward in the book. He's a very nice guy, Regis. He's not quite as silly as he is on TV, but he's a very light-hearted guy. I think you all would enjoy him. He's a Notre Dame guy as well. This is the book. Interesting thing about Frank Pomarico and Ray Serafin. Ray is a Notre Dame guy, graduated in 1970. I called him and I said, Ray, this is the first writer I called. I had all this stuff in my mind and on the computers. I had done interviews, but I needed somebody to kind of coordinate, or a writer to coordinate all this stuff together. So I called him and I says, Ray, I says, my name is Frank. He says, hey, I know who you are. You played at Notre Dame. I says, I went to Notre Dame too. I said, I know, I got your name out of the directory. And I just knew that you were a writer, and I wanted to see if you were interested in doing this project with me. So he listened, he said, boy, this really sounds neat, but you know, my wife's got MS, and he says, I got a full-time job. He says, I don't think I can do it. I said, okay, so I got to find another guy. So sure enough, 3 days go by, I hadn't found anybody. I really didn't call too many people after that, though. He calls me, he says, did you find anybody yet? I says, no. He says, my wife wants me to do it. I said, great. So we start this friendship that we're stronger now than ever. As a matter of fact, I think my son likes to go to his house more than he likes to come to my house. But his wife is a sweetheart, and we become very good friends. Ara's lessons on leadership. He always had high expectations for our team. And not just the team, but the individuals too. And what they would achieve on and off the field. He used to really be amazed at what guys would do after they left Notre Dame. Who would become a lawyer, who would become a doctor, who would become a teacher, who would become a salesperson, and the kind of things that they were going to do in their life that were going to make a difference. He had high expectations. He wanted everybody to reach as high as they possibly could. He was honest with you. You know, he would tell you if he thought that you could play or not. And if he didn't think you could play, he'd say, hey, keep working hard. You never know what's going to happen. There was always communication. You always knew where you stood with him. He always would make the rules clear. I don't want you in the bars drinking. If I catch you, you're going to get one chance. If you get in trouble, you're going to have no chances. So he told you, he built a great team of assistants that were very loyal to him. He was prepared. He worked his butt off. Offensively and defensively and special teams. He worked all three phases. Execution, he wanted that buck sweep like we were the Green Bay Packers. And we ran it over and over. We felt like we were pulling in our sleep. We did it so many times. We got pretty good at it, though. I mean, it became second nature. He was always positive. The cup was always half full. He was resilient. Even when we lost, he took the loss a lot worse than we did. But he was always ready to bounce back and compete the next day. Teamwork is what he wanted. We were a family. You know, family doesn't always mean blood relations. I think every time you have a situation where you have people that are good to you, that will do things for you with no thought of getting paid back, these are people that are treating you like family. And that's the way he wanted his teams to be. And in a lot of cases, they were. And he was the unbelievable motivator. He was full of energy, and he always had a smile on his face. This is the championship game against Alabama. Now, this game changed leads 7 times. It was, the build-up of the game was tremendous. Now, this is a long time ago. It's 1973. But it was the North against the South. It was Era against the Bear Bryant. It was the Catholics against the Baptists. And what happened in this game, early on, Alabama missed an extra point. And we missed an extra point as well, but we went for 2 and got it, and they didn't. Now you can see the highlights actually on my website. I'll share that with you, or on YouTube if you want. But they're about 29 minutes of highlights, and you see a lot of scoring. Now there was a guy that played right behind me. His name was Dan Morin. Dan was my roommate in college, but he was also a guy that was my team and played right behind me. We got along great. I hurt my ankle my senior year. I couldn't run as well as I did before. Not that I was a blazing fast guy, but I was slow. And I said, Dan, I want you to take all the specialty teams. And he says, okay. So he took all the special teams. He's in on all the special teams. And in this game, we're down by a touchdown. They kick off to us. Al Hunter gets the ball on the 3 or the 6 or something like that. Goes, I think it was 93 yards. Dan had the key block. So every time I introduced Dan to a friend, I say, this is Dan Moore who won the Sugar Bowl for us. And of course, he gets a big smile on his face. But that was a great game. And all the loyalty that we had towards Era and the fire and the passion we wanted to win this game for, Era came through. These are guys that were a big part of the team. The guy on the right is the CEO of a big steel company, makes about $4 million a year now. The guy in the middle is retired playing golf, and the guy on the left just retired as well. There's Touchdown Jesus on the north end of the campus. If you haven't been to Notre Dame, it really is a spectacular campus. And if you get a chance to see it during the summertime, it's a leisurely time to see it. In the fall, you're going to be rushing around pretty good because there's a lot of people going to swoop you off your feet if you don't get out of the way as they're heading towards the game. But there's the Irish Guard. You have to be at least 6'2" to be in the Irish Guard. And I don't know if I could have done that, not because I'm not 6'2", but those hats are pretty heavy. You have to have a strong neck to hold it up. This is the tunnel, the stairway going down to the tunnel. That sign wasn't there when I played at Notre Dame. Lou Holtz put that in, but it's a great sign. And it makes kids think about playing their best every day. You got to remember, tradition is a great thing, but it's not going to make one tackle or one block or make one touchdown for you. You have to add to the tradition or not add to it. Now, we chose to add as much as we could to that tradition. And in 1973, we won the national championship. How do you be a knight? Now, there's a whole chapter in the book that compares a medieval knight and the things that they valued and did to a knight of today, which we say is one of Ara's knights. Could be the Knights of Columbus as well. But you want to be industrious, hardworking. You want to be a team player. Everybody's for a common goal. You want to be enthusiastic about life. This is great for our high school kids. We talk about these values every day at Lumen Christi. We want to be disciplined. Find out everything you need to find out to be competitive. You want to be prepared. You want to watch film. You want to practice hard. You want to eat right. You want to be hydrated. All the things that are necessary into being a peak performer is important. Now, as a person, you want to be friendly off the field. On the field, it's business. But off the field, you want to be friendly. You want to be warm. You want to be engaging. You want to be a complete person. You want to be alert. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you want to watch the news. You want to know what's going on in the world. You want to be able to converse with people in an educated fashion. You want to read the newspaper if you can find any anymore. But I mean, that's a great thing to do, to be educated personally about what's going on in the world, so you can converse with somebody in an educated fashion. And I think the more we become aware of what's going on and educated about the world, the more sensitivity and also the more that we can encompass other faiths and understand what they're going through and become more of a one society. When it's all said and done, guys, the Jews and the Muslims and the Hindus and Buddhists, they're all breathing the same air we are. We're all eating the same kind of foods. So we got to learn to get along with them and understand that we want to help each other. That is going to make the difference in our world. Manners. That's a big thing for our kids at Lumen. You know, I don't want to hear yeah. I want to hear yes. I want to hear yes, coach. You know, I mean, I don't want you to, kiss my finger or anything, but I want you to have some means of respect when you're dealing with us. Okay, the other thing is that when you're in school, you hold the door open for a girl. You hold the door open for a teacher. There's nothing wrong with that. That's important to do. Not many people do that anymore. When you have two parents that are out working, trying to making ends meet, a lot of times things fall through the cracks. And sometimes manners are one of those things. So this is something that we feel is very important, to have a base of manners that are appropriate in every situation. To be physically fit. Now, what do I mean by that? Do you have to run marathons? No. I'm talking about get out and move, walk. You know, you don't have to walk 5 miles, walk a half hour. 3 or 4 days a week. Get a little sweat going. Cut down on that belly. Try to be physically fit so you can be as productive as possible. And be spiritually based. I don't mean religiously based. I mean spiritually based. I mean, inside of you have an idea of what peace is for you. What is something that is going to make a difference in the world. Sure. Have no breaking point on your values. This is one of Ara's biggest things. That's on his sign right there. That's a statue at the stadium. These are the captains 30 years after the national championship. When you are the champion, you are the organization. So when you're the leader of whatever organization you're talking about, you're the guy that's pulling the weight and has responsibility. People have to get by you in order to make the project fail. The values tonight: to serve, make a difference in people's lives, to strive for excellence on and off the field, not to yield to the dark side of life, but to continue to head for the light, the positive side of life, to provide hope, believe in a higher power, pass that on to people. No matter how bad it gets, we're going to make it. A person may be really sick, and it may be inevitable that they're going to pass. But you can give them hope that whatever happens, the guy upstairs is going to take care of them. And have patience and persistence. Every day doing the right thing, good things are going to happen. Thomas asked Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? He says it's inside of you and it's all around you. If we can find that center of peace of who we are and what we're doing on this earth, I think we can pass to the next side with a great amount of relief. Keep the kingdom, love in our hearts for our fellow man, make a difference in the world, have peace of mind, pass it on to the next generation. Your life, your conscience, your soul is going through rough seas. You have all these different conflicts going in and out of them. My son told me, he says, Dad, what it's like is rough seas. And what you're looking for are calm waters. So when I sign everything I sign, at the end I put, may the waters of your consciousness be calm forever. They must say, this guy must be some kind of cracker. This is what 30 years is going to look like here, 40 years. That's 1973. Let's see. I'll quickly go through this. A 10-year reunion, we all said to ourselves, hey, we can still play with these guys. At 20 years, we started talking about our kids. At 30 years, we started talking about how bad our necks hurt, our hips, our knees. At 40 years, we start realizing how important reunions are, that people are starting to pass. Guys are having heart attacks, guys are dying of cancer. And, I remember in the 40th reunion, we were out on center field at Notre Dame. And the announcer said, ladies and gentlemen, at center field, we have the 1973 national championship team. All of a sudden, everybody stood a little straighter. Their chest came out, even though their hips and knees were killing them. But, we, for one brief second there, we were still the champions of college football. It was a great feeling. This is what 40 years looks like. It's tough to look at it sometimes. As one of our nights, I believed in the midst of all the darkness and confusion in the world, we have a chance to change people to see the positive side of life. To know that each person has a warm light inside of them and is looking for direction, encouragement, confidence, and hope. We can give that to them. We're way ahead of the game. We can give it to them. We must forever keep the dark side away from people and keep them pointing towards the light. Anyone can be one of our knights. Anyone can be one of the Knights of Columbus. If you have the core values I talked about, you will make great decisions. This is my website, Set 2, be a champion every day. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to Set 2, all my information's on there. This is Tom. Tom is the guy who put together my website. And you will be a positive voice in the world that is hungry for common sense and makes people productive and help them find their purpose in life. The kingdom is inside of us, guys. We've got to find that peace of mind. Thank you for your time today, and I hope this presentation helps you understand how much you are needed. Thanks a lot.